Presented by Prize Picks. $100 match on your first deposit with the promo code. Welcome to Light Years. Andy Lou, we were recording this at 7 in the morning, day after the finals. We are now morning guys. I think that just means we're washed and old.
I was gonna say I woke up at like 7. I was like, you know what, Sam? Let's just record right now. Let's get this done. I'm asleep by 8 o'clock. Let's get it done.
I was out getting my coffee. I'm like, let's do this. Let's get it out of the way. Don't have to think about figuring a time after work tonight. Just do it, get it out of the way.
Most productive time.
Yeah, man. Game 1. I feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff. Are you surprised it was a blowout?
No, I think you and I agreed. You and I agreed on the Mavs Timberwolves, which was interesting, and then I think we agreed on the Boston Dallas series, where I think Boston wins kind of easily. You know, if Boston's going to win games in the series, I think they're going to win by like 15 points. The close games are maybe 65-35 Dallas, right? So that's where I think Dallas is going to take 2. Probably some of the closer ones. Boston maybe takes 1. But Boston plays a type of style where if they're going to win, they're going to win blowouts, right? Which is what happened last night.
I'm going to need to see Boston win a title before I believe it. Everything, like, I'll put it this way. Everything on paper suggests they're the better team. The roster fits top to bottom, so much talent. But at some point, I think Dallas is probably going to get back into the series in game 2, at worst game 3. At some point, they're going to have to respond to adversity. And maybe this is the year. I would not be shocked if this was the year Jason Tatum took that leap where it's like, enough. Time to do it.
Brown.
You know?
All right, but are you picking Boston or are you picking Dallas? Maybe
I went Dallas in 7.
Okay.
I think, but that's also like a cop-out. Anytime you pick in 7, you're basically saying, I don't really know where I want to go with this, you know? So I don't have a super strong feeling. Honestly, 50, 52, 48, Dallas is where my head's at on it.
Okay, so I was wrong. Wow. I think
and I like Boston, and I want Boston to win. Like, I would, if you ask me who I'd want, I'd like to see them rewarded for building their team organically and doing things the right way. But I don't know, man. I could just see them getting into a tight game later in the series, and I know who will perform if the game's tight down the stretch.
Yeah. I mean, Jaylen Brown made some big plays there. I mean, it was touch and go in the third quarter, but that's the third quarter, and it's an 8-point game, right? Like, it's not a 3-point game in the 4th of the NBA Finals, and we've seen what happened. But the Celtics remind me a little bit of the Warriors, honestly. Since we're going to talk Warriors,
which version of the Warriors? They don't remind me.
The good version. The good version. And you're watching the first quarter, their defense, they've got a great game plan against Luka, right? Like, okay, maybe don't give Luka free runs at the rim and lobs to Lively. They took that all away. It doesn't hurt when Porzingis is a super mobile big. The 3-point shooting, kind of like the way they go about, everyone can shoot on the floor. Everyone can create. Now, they don't have like a super elite creator, but everyone can take 3 dribbles to the hole and kick out, right? Like, that's what Boston's really good at. And when they hit like 6 threes in a row in the first quarter, it just blew the game open. The game was over right there. It did remind me of a Warriors type of run where they're locking up Luka, they're locking up Kyrie. Kyrie was awful, man. And then they just banged out threes on the other side. That's it. And when the Warriors used to win games, right? They used to win by 20. Like, it wasn't a, hey, this is going to be an ugly kind of. Yeah. They win those games too, but you know, more often than not, the Warriors, they played those Cavs team. Like, they win those games by 20 points.
If they won ugly games, it was on defense more than offensive execution down the stretch. I agree with you. The thing about Boston with the 5-out spacing, like, this is the future of how every team's going. I was chuckling so much when people are like, oh, bully ball is back, or big guys are back. I'm like, you do need positional size, and size will always matter, but you're not making 3 worth less than 2. You know what I'm saying? Guys are just going to get better at hitting the shot. They're not going to turn into Steph Curry, but they can turn into Jaylen Brown. They can turn into Derek White. You know, that can be a thing. And then, dude, a stretch 5 who's mobile enough to play defense is just such a game changer. I mean, even if you want to talk about the Warriors title 2 years ago, their best lineup was Otto Porter, who was a stretch big and like a legit shooter. Obviously, Klay and Poole could shoot the ball. In Poole's case, he could create. And at that point, Wiggins was shooting the ball incredibly well. He was definitely a guy you had to close out to because he'd take an open shot. Yeah, Draymond, more of a connector, passer, not a shooter. But you could say Drew Holiday is the same thing. You know, Drew's not trying to gun his shot. He's like last option to shoot it, but he'll still take it. It's funny to watch that and then think about all the times people are like, why don't they play Kuminga at the 3? Why don't they play Trace and Draymond and Kuminga? Why don't they play Wiggins and Kuminga at the 2 and the 3? And I'm like, bro, they don't get enough shooting when they play their shooters. What makes you think with less shooters it's going to be good? The spacing's going to work.
That's funny. You know, there's always Kuminga and Jaylen Brown. I mean, you brought it up like 2 years ago. Comparisons. Jaylen Brown was the best player on the Celtics last night. There were a lot of good players on the Celtics, but he was the best player on those. He was the one, right? Like he's Western Conference Finals MVP for whatever that's worth, but especially defensively, 3 blocks and 3 steals, and that's probably. I mean, there's a lot of question marks about Kuminga, but that's probably the one where Kuminga is like that's the easiest part for him to get better. So I think those are the comparisons. I'd be like, okay, did you see what he did? He blocked Kyrie at the rim. He's stealing passes, right? The other stuff where it's like he's getting to the hole, he's dunking. Like, yeah, Kuminga could do that too. But that's the defensive stuff where I'm like, man, Jaylen Brown. If you're making the argument Jaylen Brown's better than Jason Tatum, I mean, like maybe that's the argument. Although I think those guys are kind of the same B+ type players.
Tatum's better until the defense starts putting their best guy on Brown and their second best guy on Tatum. It's the Steph KD argument for me. You tell me who scares you more that way. But you know what? The Jaylen Brown Kuminga comp, like I could see Kuminga becoming that player over time. It's worth noting Jaylen Brown's 28 years old now. How many years did we watch him, can't dribble with his left hand, all these playoff failures. So even if you think he can one day become as good as Jaylen Brown, which would be amazing because that's an every year all-star, right?
Yeah, right.
We're talking 6-7 years down the road.
What's Steph
and
doing?
We're still probably not talking about a guy you build a team around. You're talking about the number 2 or the number 3 guy.
Because you better have Jason Tatum, right? You better have Jason Tatum. And by the way, to your point about like big guys and stuff, like it's impossible to find a Jokic. It's very possible to find a Jaylen Brown. It's very possible to find a Derek White. Like that stuff happens all the time. I mean, like Kristaps Porzingis was awesome, but it's like it is possible to find those guys. It's possible to find a Jason Tatum. It's not possible to find a Jokic. It's not.
There's 5, maybe 8 legitimate first options on a contender in the NBA, and I still think Steph is one. And no one can convince me he isn't until you put a viable team around him and they can't do anything. This was not a viable team that we saw last year. But there's 5 or 8 of those guys. I would say there's probably 25 to 30 guys who could be a second option, depending on who your first option is and the confluence of players.
The Celtics have 4 of them.
Maybe. Yeah, no. I mean, I think they have 2 of them. I think
for sure.
Derek White and Drew Holiday are more like perfect glue guys than second options.
2.5.
But Kristaps and Jaylen Brown are absolutely could be a second option if you have that Steph, if you have that Luka, if you have that Jokic, if you have that LeBron, if you have that at some point Kawhi, like a lot of these, maybe Tatum now, like that sort of thing, right?
No.
So what I was going to say on you were talking about Jaylen Brown's defense. I agree with you there. For me, though, the thing that frustrates me most with the Kuminga development arc is the offense. He will never be Jaylen Brown until he can shoot the ball with confidence. And I know Jaylen Brown's not even a great shooter, but you know Jaylen Brown is? If you leave him wide open, like the Warriors did in that game in Boston, where they decided to not guard him so they could have Draymond roaming. If you leave him wide open, he'll hit a shot. He'll do it every time, right? It's when you contest that he can't really shoot the ball. Like he's not Klay Thompson, right? He's not even Jason Tatum on that ability. But to his flip side, all he needs is you to contest, and then he can blow to the rim and get a dunk, free throws, whatever it may be, right? And that part of Kuminga's game, whether it's coaching or whether it's him, that's the part that gives me the most hesitation, because name a wing player who can't shoot the ball who's a star. You got to be like a LeBron
Giannis.
level. He's not a wing, he's a big.
Yeah, I mean, and it's Giannis, and by the way, it's Giannis. So, I mean, it's
and that's my point. Giannis has to play. Giannis has to play the 4-5 because he can't shoot.
Yeah, I mean, he's also
6'11".
absurd. Yeah, he's also absurdly athletic. I mean, it doesn't matter what he plays.
Well, he's 4 inches taller than Kuminga.
Yeah.
Is the other point.
Right.
So it's like he is a big. But to your point, yeah, like when he was younger, they tried to play him at the shooting guard, the small forward.
No, you're right. Like, he can dribble too, you know.
I really think the shot's more important than the handle, because even Jaylen Brown, like he's not like a ball handler. He just like he can do enough to get to the rim. He can do enough if you close out on him to get to the rim, but he's not going to like dissect a defense off the dribble.
Right. I think Kuminga and Jaylen probably end up. Kuminga probably ends up at the Jaylen Brown level of ball handling. Maybe Kuminga might actually end up a little better. I wouldn't be surprised.
What does it mean if no one respects the shot?
I agree with you.
You have to be like a LeBron level passer to compensate, you know,
or a Kyrie or Steph level ball handler, which those things aren't happening. So then you're right. So just be able to shoot the ball, and I mean, he's gotten better at shooting. That's the thing. He's gotten better at shooting, but it's more set shot, you know, corner three, wing three. I don't.
And it has to be like the defense has to know you're going to take the shot. So because they still don't guard him when on the 3-point line.
I'm not sure what you do. Jaylen Brown also has a jump shot, which like he actually like gets up and shoots those contested shots. Which Kuminga's version of like a jump shot is at the mid-range line, which I mean his mid-range jump shot is pretty pure. But you're right. I mean, that stuff that's just 2024, right? Like it's more important for you to be able to make a three than a contested 15-footer, at least for the majority of regular season games. So it's such a hard comparison too, because there are so many nuanced things that Jaylen Brown does better. But I think to go back to what you're saying in terms of timeline, like where is Steph? You know what I mean? When Kuminga theoretically does turn into Jaylen Brown.
Steph's retired and golfing when this happens.
Like is Steph even in the Bay Area? Like is he just back in Carolina or wherever the hell? You know what I mean? Is he living in Europe? I don't even know, dude. Like he just might not. Like, Buster Posey was gone the moment he retired. You know what I mean? Now he came back.
Then he came back.
Yeah, then he came back because he wants to run the Giants. But it's like, dude, what is even? Where is Steph? He's definitely not playing. He's definitely not playing. He'll be 41 years old. Definitely not playing. So that argument is almost moot, Sam. It is almost moot, right? Because 6 years from now, if Jaylen Brown's your best player on the team,
forget if he's your best player. You're making a decision when you kind of talk about it that like you don't care if it takes until 2027. Which is essentially saying, Steph, thank you, but we're thinking about the future. Which is the whole 2 timeline thing, which is beautiful. The shooting thing interests me, though, because I keep wondering how much of it's coaching and development and how much of it's just, you know, some guys just don't feel comfortable shooting the ball. Because Steve, I mean, it's been one of my issues, but like the coaching staff really does kind of like push, move the ball, don't take that shot. You know, when Kuminga used to fire shots, he would get benched. Once Kuminga understood that you pass the ball to Steph or you dunk it, then he started playing. Now that's useful, but is that best for his long-term development?
I mean,
and then to your point, but can he develop long-term and you win games? Have we had this debate before?
Yeah, it's that's the debate, right? It's easier for him if he just played on a bad team and just did the Jordan pool. You know what I mean? Like it's almost not even his fault. I mean, there's so much of it where I get frustrated watching him, and it's almost you go back to it and it's like, man, put him on a freaking 25-win team and just let him develop, and whether it works out or not, at least he had the chance to do it versus versus he's forced to do all these things that, I don't know, maybe it's just not Kuminga's thing versus like Moses Moody, I feel like, although he doesn't play either. So never mind.
But what I was going to say is,
sense.
I mean, if you want to take it back to Jaylen Brown, and last point on this is
Yeah.
Boston played the long game. They made those moves for Kyrie and Gordon Hayward, and then they pivoted off of them, and they were just like, you know what, we're gonna let the Jays develop, and we're gonna live with it. Whereas the Warriors, they're still kind of like, we want to be in it with our main older guys, but we also like you can't have it both ways. It just doesn't work. You're probably shortchanging Kuminga's development trajectory by not letting him fully explore his game. And you're also shortchanging Steph by essentially not letting him have a fighting chance at contention.
Yeah. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. All right, we'll talk more about the my favorite team, the Celtics, after this. The Light Years podcast. We are brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Priority last-minute deals. You could save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Flash deals save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. All-in pricing, this is my favorite one. All-in pricing, toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So what did I talk about last time? I always bring up the Giants. Last time I brought up Bill Burr. This time I will bring up Millennium tickets. He is back in San Francisco. He's a San Francisco guy, he claims. He went to SI. So he's that's his team. He always wears a Giants hat when he plays. He will be back in SF in mid to late July. I will be there. Use Game Time to get those seats. Use all-in pricing. Use the lowest price guaranteed. If you don't, if it is not the lowest price guarantee, then Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LIGHTYEARS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LIGHTYEARS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we are brought to you by Unified. Unified, whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. Unified Healing is a new, innovative global network of wellness centers powered by the EE system, the Energy Enhancement System. If you haven't heard of the EE system, this technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation, whether you're in the Bay or hundreds of other locations across the globe. Access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE system for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/lightyears to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/lightyears. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
Cool. The other thing I was getting a ton of texts about, I was seeing coming across my Twitter and just the general Warrior fan sentiment was Kristaps Porzingis # would have been nice. We talked about it earlier, like 5-out spacing and how useful it is. And we know it's a game changer. And they've tried after they lost Otto Porter. They tried with JaMychal Green. Didn't work. Tried with Dario Saric. Didn't work. Boston went the other direction. They traded for like a star big. Like Porzingis is more qualified than like a role player 3-and-D center, right?
Yes.
Better than that. But it's hard not to look at it and see that the Warriors traded Jordan Poole for Chris Paul when they could have attempted to trade for Kristaps Porzingis. Was that even an option?
That's the thing, right? That last part I think is pretty big because I mean you can argue that maybe the trade machinations don't work to get Porzingis, But I got a feeling, Sam, that they never really cared to get Porzingis, and that in it itself, I think, is the problem. That they didn't care to do that, which would signify that there's really no adjustment from the team to get better in different ways. It's kind of just a double down, a triple down. It's like you fuck up by saying something and you realize you messed up, but you don't want to apologize, right? It's the word they don't want to say that they should probably get better by doing different things, like getting a star big, like what you're saying. Instead, it's like, well, maybe we get Chris Paul and we double down.
He won't turn the ball over like Jordan Poole. It's like, yeah, because that was the only issue. That was the issue. Just Jordan Poole's turnovers. That was the only issue on the roster. I will say, I don't think they could have got Porzingis because Porzingis had a player option, which means if they wanted to trade him somewhere, he had to pick up his option. So he could say, I don't want to go to the Warriors. I want to go to the Celtics. And I think he did. I think he wanted to go to the Celtics. And I can't blame him for wanting to go to the Celtics over the Warriors. The Celtics, younger, very obviously in their title window, and the Warriors off of the Draymond punch. And
true.
I've just been thinking about this. All right. Warriors couldn't get Porzingis in a trade. I truly believe that. They didn't go for Siakam because they're worried about re-signing him. I don't know if I believe that. I wonder how attractive they are at this point. And how much of it is in their control and how much of it is just, look, man, when one of your star players punches a dude out and then gets $100 million extension, you're not exactly sending a message to other star players that they're going to get equal footing. Like, how much of this, I guess my question for you is, how much of this is management indecision? Like, just show some balls and go for it. And how much of it is, you can't sell something that people don't want.
Well, it would be a little surprising to me if. So it's twofold, I think. Maybe, okay, so it's three. Because the first one is Draymond. That's the real problem. But I also think, like, you don't think if Steph showed up and just talked to Porzingis and told him, like, yo, we're all good. Come play with me. You're going to be the second option. You're going to be the guy. You can go sign a long-term contract here. We've won 4 championships. Like, I think that's a pretty compelling argument. So I think that's one thing that I think, like, I'm not blaming
Steph's brand is still strong.
I do think so. And I don't think Steph was doing that because I think Steph was I don't think Steph was all in on Chris Paul, but I think Steph was like, okay, you guys brought this up. I can see the vision. I'll go with it. That's kind of who Steph is, right? Steph's not like, okay, this is what I want to do. So I think that's one thing.
Maybe that's changing this offseason. It needs to change.
It needs to. Thank you. Because I think what's happening now is not working. And then the third thing is, and I think this is what you're getting to. I think the front office isn't creative enough or willing to take the risk and be like, let's go build, because you're kind of building around Porzingis, right? Sure. And I think their thing is like, if we're going to build around someone, we want to be sure that someone, unless we're building around lottery picks, which never work. But if we're building around someone, we want to make sure that guy is the guy. We want to make sure Porzingis is actually going to be Embiid. We want to make sure Porzingis is going to be Giannis. And it's like, dude, whoever you're going to freaking trade for is going to be a question mark, man. Like, there's no, either the contract's going to suck, or he's not healthy, or he doesn't play the Warriors way, right? Like, so,
or he might be a risk to walk in 12 months, and you have to prove to him you don't want to walk because we take care of our guys.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that was, I truly think like that was a part of it too, where, dude, man, if the Warriors are going to make a trade, and we're going to see it in a month here, because it's June 7th today. The Warriors are going to make a trade. They're going to have to trade for someone that has question marks. It's just, I don't know if they want to do that. I guess they did it with Wiggins, but like they didn't give up a pick to get Wiggins. You know what I mean? Like,
they got a pick.
They got a pick.
And part of me wonders if they did that trade just for the pick. They didn't even give a shit about Wiggins.
Honestly, probably.
Given that Steph was injured, they knew they were going to get a top 5 pick in 2020, and then they were going to get a lottery pick from the Wolves the following year. They were looking at it from like asset accumulation on some level. And then also they're just like, we think we have a better chance at developing Wiggins than D'Lo, which probably fair too. I mean, actually fair. 100% fair.
Yeah,
so,
right.
But to your point, we got to go back 5 years. They executed that trade. Sorry, 4.5 years. They executed that trade at the trade deadline in 2020.
Yeah, right.
So February 2020, their next chance at making these moves is going to be, let's just say, July 2024. 4.5 years, 4.5 cycles. Now they didn't win a title.
I was going to say, didn't they win a title by making that trade? So it's like, shouldn't you try to make more? You know what I mean?
That's where I think ultimately I probably land somewhere around where you are, which is Draymond absolutely a linchpin in ruining everything. It's not just the punch. It's like taking this season unseriously. It's a lot of things, but he's hardly the only hothead in the league. Have you seen the way players took his side against Gobert? Do you think he's actually disliked around the league?
I don't know.
I think some people dislike him. I think a lot of people like him because he's actually he's not for everyone, but he's a good teammate to a lot of guys. I don't think he's a toxic red flag the way that can sometimes be portrayed.
You think maybe he's a good teammate for guys that are around his age, but I do think younger guys probably like it's a generational thing. Maybe this is across.
I mean, but on the flip side, he was the biggest advocate for Kuminga and Moody. Like you
think the Kuminga thing's overcompensation?
Dude, I just think him and Jordan Poole. I got a text where someone close to the situation just said they're just like water and oil. They just don't mix. Yeah. I don't know. It's like it's not an age thing. It's just a personality type. They both like go at each other, and it was inevitable something like that would happen. Not excusing it in any capacity, especially for a man as old and you'd think have better a little better intelligence than that. But I don't know who do you see mentoring young guys more, Draymond or Klay?
Yeah, I'm definitely not Klay. And I think it's
Draymond or Wiggins.
Yeah.
Come on. I can understand that. If I'm Porzingis, I definitely don't want to go to the Warriors over the Celtics because they look older. It looks like it's over. But to your point, okay, so not Porzingis. What's next? You can't like do better. Just keep you work in sales. If the first option doesn't work, you don't go to your boss and be like, couldn't sell. It's over.
Deal's done.
No, you have a quota to hit. You go out there until you find it. You go out there until it happens. And that's the part where I'm just like, look, man, you can say they couldn't have got Porzingis or they couldn't have got Siakam, but you can't tell me you liked what you had and you couldn't have done something better. So,
who is next, right? And that's where we get into these conversations where I do think you got to lower the standard. I mean, to do the same analogy, you're not going to get the best deal. Like more often than not, that's just you're not going to get the home run deals. And it feels like the Warriors do always want that home run deal. It's kind of like what people make fun of Danny Ainge for, right? Where it's he's only going to make that trade if it's a home run deal. Ironically, he's the guy that drafted and built this Celtics team, actually, and kind of was holding on to Jason and Jaylen for so long when people were saying, trade him for AD. Remember that? That was the guy that they wanted. And now Kristaps kind of the AD light type of player that they have. So I think the Warriors...
it's time to be bold, man. That's how I'm at with them. It's time to be bold.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I mean, what I do know it right now, it doesn't work.
If I have to watch them run back the entire same team next year without Chris Paul and they go get like a mid-level exception player, I'm going to be just furious most nights because there's too many holes on this roster that will not be solved internally, Clay's just not going to be 29 anymore. You're not going to get second option Klay back. He's not a second option anymore. Right? Like that's one. Looney and Draymond, like you need a big who can score the ball and shoot the ball. That's two. I don't see that on the roster. Trace isn't that guy. Shooting. I guess Pods and Moody can improve as shooters and Wiggins can get a shot back and maybe you get some shooting that way. But it's like anyway you slice it, second option and some form of a big man who can play next to Draymond. Those are things you do not have on the roster.
And those are gettable things. We're not, I don't like, I'm not as much as you are around like the second star. I'm kind of sitting here and I agree. I also think like they do have options to get all those things. They do. Whether that be making the trade for Zach LaVine, all of a sudden you solved your shooting in one go. But what do? You fucking risk. That's a huge risk, right? The contract is the risk. Maybe you lose Klay. Maybe he doesn't stay healthy. But guess what, man? Same with Porzingis. Porzingis can't stay healthy either. Shit, he missed the Eastern Conference playoffs. He missed the whole Eastern Conference playoffs. Now they're lucky because they play in the East. It's a joke. But
that's the other funny part,
right? Like that, it works out for Boston because they're in Boston and they're not in San Francisco, right? They're lucky because of that. But like that risk does work for them. So for the Warriors, I think the same thing. Whether whoever you're trading for, there's a risk. But at least the risk is better than what we know right now, which is,
we never really talked about this. So LaVine has been a name we've talked about a lot.
My guy.
Any acquisition of LaVine is likely to come at the cost of Klay. Maybe not, but you're hampering your chances to re-sign Klay. And I just want to point this out. Bleacher Report, their current estimate, their prediction, 2 years, $46 million. 23 a year. The Warriors apparently offered 2 years, 48 in the offseason. So 20, basically the same thing. The prediction is he's going to end up on whatever their offer was. And maybe there's a third year. Maybe there's something different. If they were to acquire LaVine, one of Klay or Wiggins is 100% gone because they can't carry all those contracts and execute the trade and stay under the second apron. Just mathematically, it doesn't work. Would you be okay with Klay walking if you got LaVine?
You're asking me to pick between Klay and Wiggins is what you're asking me to do.
It's two different questions. Yeah.
Well, sure. I'd be okay. I'd sign off on that LaVine trade, and because this one's tough. But because
there's the emotional side to it.
There's an emotional side and there's a roster construction side because I think you need all three. For sure you need all three. The best version of the Warriors is you get all three and Klay comes off the bench. Because those are all three good players. But obviously, based on what you're saying, if you got to pick two and the one I pick for sure is LaVine, then the roster construction stuff is you got to pick Wiggins because he's the better point of attack defender. He's the guy that doesn't need the ball as much. He could this is all based on the fact that I think Wiggins gets back to 80% of the player that he was from 2 years ago.
That's the gamble you're making. Because
that is the gamble.
If you get something that approaches 2022 Wiggins, you need that player. But
you need him, right?
But his career tells us the odds are more in the favor that you're going to get 2024 Wiggins than 2022 Wiggins.
2020, 23, and 24. Yeah, I just. But then if you have LaVine and Klay, then it's really hard to play defense, right? It's just really hard to play defense.
You don't play defense.
You don't. Yeah. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you keep GP2 now. Is GP2 even part of that trade?
GP2's 15 minutes a game isn't saving you. 15 minutes a game, 42 games a year.
I was going to say 15 games a year, dude. I don't. No, maybe you. So it's just hard because now you've got Steph 35 minutes. LaVine 35 minutes, Klay 32 minutes.
Let's call it 25 minutes, but yeah.
Those are all your minutes, and none of those guys play defense. So where the hell does that? That's why I'd rather just gamble with Wiggins, but it is all just a gamble, and I'd rather go with the Wiggins one, and just. I mean, is Klay willing to take $10 million?
That's the only way you could. That's the only way all three could be acquired. You eat LaVine's terrible contract, and you do that because his contract sucks. You don't have to give up anything in value, go for it.
Can I say something on the Klay front? That's really frustrating, and I'm sure the people that are going to disagree with me are going to say "What's his money? He could do whatever he wants." But from my perspective, Sam, if Klay really cares about winning and being on the Warriors, he would sign for $10 million. He would, based on do you want to play with Steph and Draymond, and do you actually want to be part of a team that wins? Because he actually has the opportunity to take less money. Wiggins can't just rewrite his contract and take less money. which I would be happy if he did, but he can't do that. Klay is the guy that has a chance to do that. Tim Duncan did it. That's how those Spurs teams kept getting better. Dirk,
Manu Ginobili,
right? Like just, and again, look, man, if you want your 30 million, if you want your 25 and you're going to leave because of that, I truly, no hard feelings. But if you want to be a guy that says, gonna want to stay on the Warriors and let's go get Levine and let's have this team where it's Klay, Levine, Wiggins, Draymond, Steph, and like those are your 5 guys, and it's Kuminga you still have, and then so it's like that's a team that we can still win, and we just got a lot better, and all I had to do, quote unquote, is take 10 million less, right? I think Klay should do that, but again, I'm not Klay, I'm not mad at him, all that blah blah blah, but that would really help the Warriors. I just don't know if he'd do that. I just don't. And
we're about to find out.
Yep.
My overarching feeling on the Klay situation, again, probably aligns pretty similar to you. I'd like him back. He's a pretty important part of Warriors history. He will be remembered as that no matter what happens in this free agency situation. But I'm not willing to sacrifice everything this offseason to make him feel good about his contract. If he's unwilling to take a number that makes it possible for this team to assemble a roster that has a fighting chance. I'm not asking for a super team. I'm asking for someone who has a chance the way Dallas had a chance this year, the way the Lakers had a chance last year and made a run to the Western Conference Finals. I don't think it can happen with like Klay getting a huge payday. I think you're probably right. I think he has to be the one who says it's money or it's winning. Yeah. That's kind of what it comes down to, because it's the cap is what it is, man. It is what it is.
Especially if they make that trade, which Danny LaRue came in and learned me new stuff, right? And it's just like if they make that trade, they truly have no choice. It's not we can just stay over type of thing, and it's not a
Lacob doesn't want to pay that much tax thing, although maybe that factors into it too. Like they just literally can't go over a number. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
I'm sure partly if they're gonna make that trade, I'm sure it's like they're doing that kind of on purpose to give themselves a budget, right? And that's how they'll spin it. But in my head, I'm like, well, if you're making that trade and you're taking a risk on someone, like if they do make that trade for a Levine, Ingram, throw some names out there, and they do give them that artificial first cap budget room,
second apron cap, yeah,
or not first one, second one. And so I think that's fair for them to go back to Klay and say, like, look, man, like we got better, we got 11 mil that we can give you now. We like that's it, take it or leave it. I think that's like they made their trade to get better. They took a risk on a guy. It's not like they're shedding.
And maybe they do like Klay. We'll give you an extra year, so you'll get the money, but it'll be spread out over time. But we can't have your salary be higher than this. The AAV can't be higher.
25
fun term.
That stuff, it frustrates me a little. But if the Warriors do make that move, that would be really exciting. Like if they do make that trade, it would be really exciting if they took that risk on someone. Whether it works or not, might not, but I would be pretty pumped up, and we'll see, because I don't like that Chris Paul contract is probably the deadline. Right? I don't know when they would make
the Chris Paul contract. Is the deadline to make a decision is the day after the draft. However, he can extend it to start a free agency if he wants to. The point is, we'll know by the draft if they've extended it, and it's just a guarantee date, just to clarify. So we'll know by the draft whether they just let the Chris Paul thing expire or they're going to keep playing with it till they find a deal.
Really, so. And that would be, and that's June 27th or June 20, end of the month. So that would be,
the last thing I want to say is, like, I don't expect to hear a lot of noise about anything until the finals end. Only the Lakers, who are obsessed with being in the headlines, would break news about their coach during the finals. Everyone else is just kind of trying to keep their name out of the press right now. So
what is going on? What is going on with I don't really know who Dan Hurley is.
Come on, the UConn coach.
I know that, but I didn't know, like, is he that big of a deal? I know UConn's won a couple years in a row.
Back to back, baby. Back to back.
College doesn't excite me, but no, I just, it's a big thing. I thought it was JJ Redick. So, like, I don't know. Now, Dan Hurley are probably a better option than JJ Redick. JJ Redick's never coached, so good for the Lakers. But man, is it that big a deal? I guess when you're
it's interesting because, like, if coaching is just X's and O's and schemes, like, Dan Hurley is as good as it gets, because college coaching requires probably more
coaching.
Yeah, because you're dealing with lower talent, you know, like you can't just put LeBron to pick and roll and be like, look how genius I am. You know, there's a lot more like misdirection, a lot more scheme stuff going on in general. But like, you know how college coaches are. You think he's gonna subject LeBron to a 3-hour practice where he's yelling? You know, so I don't know. It's interesting. It's you know, there's let's talk about this real quick.
Yeah.
The Lakers apparently want a coach who can develop.
A full court press to convince Dan Hurley to come to LA. He has told them that he wants to hear them out. And I think the Lakers, Rob Pelinka, they want to put a program in place in LA. They don't want to just have coach to coach. They want to put a program in for the long term. They want Dan Hurley's player development program. The NBA is changing. You can't in LA anymore just trade 3 or 4 first-round picks to bring in a star player and think you can have a roster.
So the only part of that that's interesting is I do agree development matters, but it's not because you can't trade players for picks for stars. I just don't think you can build a roster through veteran minimums the way you could during like the Miami Heat days. You know what I'm saying? Like,
why? The league is better.
Teams are smart.
Yeah.
The dudes who hit the veteran minimum market are all like, the Warriors got Otto Porter. And since then, has there been another Otto Porter opportunity?
Yeah, not really.
No, it's a bunch. It's a bunch of Dario Saric. It's a bunch of flawed players. They could play a role, but like the days of let's just get 2-3 stars and then everyone's going to take a discount to come play for free to be next to like our stars. Like, I think that's gone. I think if you want to look at the Lakers, they traded a bunch of stuff for AD, but you know who they kept and developed? Caruso and Kuzma.
Yeah, they really fucked that one up.
And then once they let them go, they've been chasing it ever since, right?
Yeah, they really fucked that one up.
And so I view player development as like you have to find, like Podziemski and Trace are the examples I'm saying. You have to be able to find guys in the draft, the G League, who you can develop to play a role on your roster, because the only thing that's available for veteran minimum is old dudes who can't move, you know? Or like dudes who can shoot it but can't play a lick of defense.
Yeah. I mean, that's why they're I mean, Otto Porter's retired since then, which is no fault.
Literally gave his body for that ring.
Thank God. The Warriors, I think, gave their souls for that ring. What if it was a prime LeBron though? That's the only thing where I'm like, if it was a prime LeBron, I mean, they'd be in the Western Conference Finals at least. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but like if it was prime LeBron and the current AD, who I think played pretty well for what he is. He's not an alpha, but I don't know. It's kind of, you know, what if it's prime Steph, Klay? I mean, like, I think
but they don't have. First off, Steph and Klay had a bunch of really nice players around them. Come on, Iguodala, Bogut, those aren't veteran minimums.
Those are elite guys. Those are
Livingston, not a veteran minimum. In the Lakers sense, they did find Austin Reeves. He's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
Rui has been okay for them.
Mm-hmm.
You could say player development is taking those guys to another level to have a full roster. They don't have veteran minimums around LeBron and AD.
I was gonna say the Lakers. Yeah, there feels like a just LeBron's not good enough. I think the rest of your point about the rest of the NBA being really good, I think, is also interesting too. The Warriors, if we relate it back to the Warriors, it goes back to development of the guys that you've drafted high, and it's just impossible to do that when you are trying to win games. So I think the Lakers are, if that's what they're bringing Dan Hurley. I almost keep saying like a Rick Marley. But if you're trying to bring in Dan Hurley to do that, that's a fool's errand, in my opinion, because you cannot do that if LeBron is on the team. You cannot. It's just not. Jalen.
Well, they don't have lottery. They don't have lottery picks, but
Jalen, yeah. I forget his name, but like those
Jalen
guys.
Hood-Schifino.
Yeah,
That
who's the other guy that
might have been a
drafted?
miss.
Who's the guy
Max
that drafted last
Christie.
year? Max Christie. You're not
That might
developing
not
those
be a
guys.
miss.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
don't know.
You can't develop
Higher
those guys,
on
man.
higher
You
on
can't.
him than Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Jalen Hood-Schifino, great name.
But like, yeah, I mean, it's a mix, and it's picking guys who you think can fit a role and have the mindset to fit a role, right? Like that's the other part of it,
Yeah.
and then actually developing them to do it. The Warriors at least did good this year. Pods and Trace were the exact type of players you want to get in that scenario.
Denver tried to do something like they're like Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, and there's a couple other names.
Ironically, I think Christian Brown's good, and they just don't play him enough.
So there you go. I mean that's what
that seems more like a Mike Malone issue to
exactly.
me. Now the other ones, I don't know. Peyton Watson, like there was times where I'm like, "Ooh, he can defend," but like he does feel like a Moody or any number of Warriors guys who are just a little too raw, and you understand why Steve doesn't play him much.
It's hard to do. Like Malone and Steve Kerr, kind of similar. Like just really really good coaches that. Like, stop giving them development players, man. Like, Mike Malone's trying to get the first seed. He's not playing Peyton Watson in the regular season, develop him as much as we would like that to happen. Same with the Warriors. It's just not happening. So, I don't know. If that's why the Lakers want Dan Hurley, I would be not the right move. I got lost you, Sam. But I think we're done. Is it me or is it you? Okay. Oh man, hope we didn't lose this. That's my Wi-Fi.